Hi, everybody. This is day 1455. So let's see if I'm on, see if everything is working. Okay. Yep. All right. So it looks like some news came out. Today is 1455 days since Richard was murdered, premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss. That is a military installation right there in El Paso, Texas. Um, you have to repeat it over and over and over again because it's hard to, it's become such a norm for our soldiers to be hurt on our own military installations by criminal activity, right? By criminal activity. And the culture has gotten so criminal that it's become almost like a norm to expect that our most valuable assets that we train, number one, we have to recruit our military, right? Because we have a volunteer military. We do not conscript, even though they're talking about that. They want conscription where they will force you into the military. We are a volunteer military, and and then they make all these promises, right? They make all these promises because we provide the resources for those promises, right? For the free, not free, but we will pay for the medical care. We will pay for their housing. We will pay for their training. We will pay for their security on the military bases. And and they will be secure while they're training, and they will have um, regulations and standard operating procedures, and they will, of course, do all of that to defend the Constitution, a law, the law of the land, right? They're there to defend the law of the land of the United States of America, you know, and it's like we have lost our sense of all these details, all of these promises, yet we provide more and more and more of the resources, and those resources are going to criminal activity on our military installations that forget that when there is more and more criminal activity that leads to a premeditated murder of a soldier or the criminal trafficking surrounding the military installation or on the military installation or even through the military installation, um, we're providing those resources, and that's not defending the law of the land. That's, um, so the whole purpose of our military, and where it is, is to defend the Constitution. That's their oath, is to defend a law. And why the Constitution? Why the law? Why is it that the military installations are supposed to be the example of law abiding community, right? The military community should be the picture of the law abiding community too, especially on our military installations in our cities, near our towns, um, you know, using the resources for those in those states and in those cities, um, and they should be absolutely the example. And we have, a long history of and I know this from growing up um, outside of K-Town. I was born um, in New Mexico at White Sands Missile Range, but I was baptized in Kaiserslautern, right? In Kaiserslautern, Germany, um, because my dad got orders to Germany, and we went to Germany, and that's where I was baptized. And I grew up in Europe, surrounding these United States military installations. And I remember Ramstein and Fogelway, um, Army installation, U.S. Army installation, right there in Germany. And surrounding that would be these houses with red lights, with red hearts, and they're still there. Last time I was there, which wasn't too long ago, um, and the area um, is known, for um, things that are not morally okay. They're not morally okay. And the German community would go, oh, yeah, not that it was better for their community morally. They didn't complain too much because you got all of the U.S. dollars coming in, um, and for the contracts and everything. But and they would know it's almost become a norm. The whores and the blow, the drugs, and the sex cults. And now it's become even more with the criminal trafficking. And it's been going on for a long time. I was told from the very beginning of this search for Richard, this is nothing new. This is nothing new. And I'm like, I know, but now it's very personal because it took the life of my son. And, it's like a slap in the face of reality of what the consequences are for us to ignore our standard operating procedures, to ignore our law, to ignore our duties, to ignore esprit de corps, to ignore what is good and true, and allow this criminal activity to grow and grow and grow over the years, so that now it's not a good thing to have these security breaches along with the criminal trafficking. It's very bad. As Richard put it, Mom, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's very bad. The culture has gotten so bad. Very bad. And Richard stood up to it. And they tried to, after he was murdered, and this is, we are on 4 years ago. This is July 18th, 4 years ago. July 2020. Richard was murdered. Now, his case started before. His case was before the Walmart mass shooting. So that's coming up to 5 years ago. 5 years. So it was absolutely before his case started, because there was a reason why they murdered him. There was a reason why they premeditatedly murdered him in July of 2020. And it didn't happen as just a passionate murder. It didn't happen just because, an accident incident. It started before. And you ask, okay, why? What happened? This is a young man who said it was so bad. And when Richard says it's so bad, because, we're in a culture where things are not ever good. God is good. He knew that. He knew that. And he would not just say it's so bad, because he expected, in our conversations, he expected things to not be good. So for him to say it's so bad, it meant that it was criminal. And if you're going to call CPS, if you're going to call FBI Houston, which is human trafficking, if you're going to call Washington, D.C., if the IG are going to be all over the barracks because of Halliday. And we know through Brigadier General Stewart, and we know through Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz. Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz needs to be arrested. He needs to be arrested because he told us that they brought in girls during the COVID lockdown, that he brought them in with, and it had to be Major General Clem Coward. And he said it so freely because it was the culture. It wasn't the first time they provided the girls. And they're young. They're very young. Belen was very young. And they exploit our young people. The reaction to Richard being murdered, being brutally murdered, being premeditated, brutally murdered. There's no other option. That's why Jakovitz was shaking, because he knew. And the reaction to it, the will to cover it up, to obey unlawful orders. You see, to cover up the brutal premeditated murder of Richard was obeying unlawful orders when they are supposed to defend the Constitution. They are supposed to defend the law of the land. They're not supposed to obstruct justice. They have no pressure, I shouldn't say no pressure, but they have no obligation to obey unlawful orders. And for Jake Jakovitz to, off the cuff, it was like nobody would ever do anything about it, to say that we were bringing in the girls during the COVID for the parties, to party, to lift morale. That's what he said, to lift morale. Okay, so what do they go in there for? A tea party? Do they go in there to stand 6 feet apart from each other? Or do they have an animal house and they film it? They film it and they drop these recordings. And this is why these airdrops of recordings. And now we know that children are involved. That absolutely children are involved. And they film it. That's why Leilani Hart was reporting on the child pornography. That she was reporting that a 7-year-old was sexually assaulted. That means torture by multiple members of her household in her master bedroom. That's why when absolutely Richard reported the criminal trafficking, he reported what was so bad. You don't call FBI Houston. You don't call Washington, D.C. You don't make reports, multiple reports to CPS. And we know who those people are. And we know that DES Thomas Kane absolutely also said it's so bad. It's so bad. Talking about the emergency intake center. And so anyone defending Jules Chan in all of this, when he had firsthand experience with the emergency intake center because he had obligations and duties at the emergency intake center. It's on his CV. It's in his LinkedIn that he took down. And he's military. He's supposed to be the example of law enforcement. He took an oath to defend the Constitution. And we know, not because of me, because of witness testimony over and over again, that it was so bad. Sorry, I have a runny nose. So, absolutely, anyone defending him and him wanting to maintain his secret, staying anonymous behind the Real Fit Fam El Paso. The emergency intake center came after Walmart. What launched the Real Fit Fam El Paso into success was the Walmart mass shooting. That's not me saying it. That's him saying it. You have to read the articles. And he's in the security business. He had firsthand experience, response. He was the original part of the original response team for the Walmart mass shooting. While he was an influencer on a for-profit social media site, saying he needed to be anonymous. And this is a group of them. It's not just Jules. But Jules is a registered agent, and he's the officer, and he knows better. He has security clearances. He took the oath of office. He has security training. He has health training. He's supposed to be looking after the health the welfare of those that he has been given the obligation to look after. And that was the children at the emergency intake center. And many more, much more. And to engage in criminal activity, which he has. And when he was called out, because let me tell you, think about we're reaching out to the Real Fit Fam El Paso, saying it's a defamatory and false story about the death of my son, of our hero, Richard Halliday. It's a defamatory and false, fake story. And we have evidence. We have proof. We have our own story. At least post up our story. And we were ignored. And, you just don't walk away from something like that. You just don't walk away from something like that. When they are wanting to continue to smear our son and our family right when we have become a Gold Star family. You don't walk away from something like that. We had just been given the declaration of death, which we knew and which the Army knows and the government knows that it was a declaration that Richard was premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss. And we were given the declaration and the gold stars and everything that goes with it, the receipts that go with it. And you have some influencer, some major media outlet in El Paso that wants to defame your son and defame your family with the death story. You don't walk away from something like that. And so you research. Who the hell is this? How are they anonymous? And then you find out this is a military officer. This is a military officer that is supposed to be the lead public health and safety officer. That's supposed to be the public health preparedness liaison at the city of El Paso, Department of Public Health. This is the Public Health Preparedness Liaison Strategic National Stockpile Coordinator for the city of El Paso, at the city of El Paso. This is a captain in the Medical Service Corps at the United States Army Reserve. This is a director of communications of public safety at the University of Texas at Austin. This is a communications public safety at UTPD Public Information Officer at the University of Texas in Austin. This is a Healthcare Operations Advisor. This is the Deputy Director of Supply Chain Management in the U.S. Army. This is the Director of Wounded Warrior Remote Care Clinic at U.S. Army. That right there is VA connected with James Hart. Medical Service Operations Logistics Officer. This is who is the social media influencer peddling a defamatory and false, fake story. I'm trying to stay calm about our son right when he was declared murdered. And we were given the gold stars and all the benefits for it. This is who is not communicating with us, not until we found out who he was. And then he's like, what am I going to do now? Oh, yeah, I'll go over there with Leilani Hart and Dallas Hart and Corinne Adeline and Amber, the disgusting, disgraceful Amber Chase. I'll go over there with Bob Moore, with Nick Brownbaum-Nofzinger, the PR, the active duty public relations guy. That's where I'll go. I will communicate and negotiate in respect of this murdered soldier and his family. Respectfully negotiate. I'll go over there and start harassing them. I'll go over there with those that have threatened them, that have bombarded this family day in and day out with vile, threatening, vulgar, sexually explicit messages to silence them in order they can't silence us. Just like the cashier, she could not be silenced. Praise God for her. But that's what they do. They bully. They intimidate. They say the most vulgar, sexually explicit, shocking you into silence, into intimidation, so that you will go away and they will be allowed to desecrate our Constitution. That's what Jules Chan has done. The rule of law that he was and is still obligated to defend, paid by the American people to defend. And through these contracts, being a reservist, being active duty, having Garda World, getting contracts. We know about the contracts. We know about the LLCs. We know about the connections. Absolutely. And to then in March of 2021 to forfeiture his obligation to the Secretary of State of Texas, to the state of Texas, his limited liability. Someone needs to absolutely look into that, because not only is he desecrating the United States Constitution, but what about Texas law? He wants taxpayers' money to pay for everything, for the contracts, for the all his benefits. And yet, he wants to operate a for-profit business, but forfeiture any obligation to the state since 2021? What does that mean? That he hasn't paid his taxes? That, is there some kind of special privilege that we don't know about? and then he's um, upset that we bought the available LLC. The Fit Fam El Paso, and that we registered the DBAs at the El Paso County Clerk. Why didn't he do it? He's had it for a long time. But we did it. And this is big news, Bob Moore of El Paso Matters. This is big news, Jules Chan of the Real Fit Fam El Paso. I don't even know, we own the Fit Fam El Paso LLC. We own the name, the Real Fit Fam El Paso. Fit Fam El Paso. We did both of them. This is big news that the family that you thought it was okay to use our son's picture without our permission, and we have to address it too, and even another news agency did it, using our son's picture without our permission, didn't even have the respect and the courtesy to contact us to get our side of the story. How can you just let that go? You don't just walk away from that and let people walk all over your dead son's memory and your family when they're obligated, when they have obligated. This is El Paso Matters, is El Paso Community Foundation. They're supposed to, they all get benefits, 501c3s, a charity organization. El Paso Community Foundation. That's not charitable. To use a picture without even the courtesy of asking the family. Not even the courtesy of getting the comments from the family. After no less than 15 times of the family, that's like begging. Us begging them. But Angela Kachurga, who says she cares about children, who says she cares about women, about the border, she is so evil. And Bob Moore is even more evil. And it really, really makes you the suspicion that Yvonne Rosales was up to a very good thing by launching an investigation into El Paso Community Foundation for the way they were distributing the money of the victims fund from the Walmart mass shooting. Those suspicions go way up, because with this kind of behavior, this kind of disrespect, if they are going to disrespect a Gold Star family, if they are going to disrespect the declaration of death of a soldier that was in communication with the Child Protective Services, with the FBI Houston, with Washington, D.C., with I said that, but it's meant, you have to say it over and over again, Child Protective Services. Because now we have it in the news. We have it in Congress. That they were up to no good at the Emergency Intake Center, which was on Fort Bliss, which was under the obligation of Ann Ogle and Thomas Kane and Jules Chan. And at least, you know, and Ogle with all her LLCs, very telling. And Thomas Kane, the Directorate of Emergency Services for Fort Bliss, before his time, retiring. Let me get out of this. After saying it was so bad that there were security breaches. Absolutely, Richard was another Vanessa Guillen case. That Richard was a good meal for the coyotes. And Jules Chan siding with the prime suspects in the murder of Richard, Leilani Hart and Dallas Hart, in the harassment, in the threats, in the bombardment of these sexually explicit messages. Like that's where he's going to go. That's what the group that he wants to be part of. And he is part of security or the response teams. And this is who we find out who wants to be anonymous behind being an influencer to now it's, what is it, over 420,000 followers. The great hypnosis. The great hypnosis of a people. And being in health, he went along with all of that COVID insanity. And maybe I'm not even allowed to say that. The insanity of 2020. It was insane. While they knew it, and they knew it, and the insanity of the false and fake and defamatory stories of the Walmart mass shooting. And who did they defame? It became political. They defamed Trump's followers, the MAGA. They made it political. They made it like it was racist. And there's one thing that when you watch all of the news coverage of the Walmart mass shooting, when you look at all of the news coverage and the court coverage of the Walmart mass shooting and Patrick Crusius, and you look at the pictures of him surrendering to a Hispanic law enforcement officer, the pictures, the videos, they all give a totally different story than that criminal Ernest Christopher Grant. He's a total criminal. And he's getting unjust protection. Unjust protection. Why? Because he has a good friend, Chris Cuomo, Beto. These people have obligations in the media, and we have gotten so forgetful of what duty is, what honor is, what our allegiance is, who pays the bills, what what production is. And we're so pervasive in lies. There's lies with impunity. And so do I believe that Jules Chan knows about Richard more, can enlighten us more? 100%. Does his criminal activity, does his betrayal of his duty, betrayal of his duty at the Garda World, betrayal of his duty at U.S. Army, Reserves, at U.S. Army, his betrayal of El Paso, crisscross with James Hart, with Tavita Nusa at the time, with Marlon Soto, so that's CID, that's VA. If you're a response team member, of course. If you're doing Wounded Warrior, of course. Are you going to cross the paths of Tavita Nusa, of Marlon Soto, of even the FBI? Jesus Eddie Nieto, of course. Are you going to cross paths, especially when you're in Fit Family? He even betrayed that. This is not a fit family. When you're betraying, when you're engaged in criminal activity, when you're using, it is so illegal to use your security clearances, your job at the city of El Paso, to verify, to post stories up and be an influencer and carry on false narratives, defamatory stories. It is a disgrace because he's absolutely crossed paths with Bradford Bugado of the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM and Nadal Baim being logistics. Absolutely cross paths. And who are these people? They're main suspects in the premeditated murder of Richard and the cover-up of it. And then as an influencer or trying to let the public know what's going on, they defame and they lie. And they don't even give the family, a Gold Star family. And you saw it last night at the RNC, that the Gold Star families were engaged in politics because this becomes political because of the lies, the constant lies, and the betrayal, our military installations. Even if in Afghanistan, not bringing back any of the equipment, not even organizing a proper withdrawal. No, it had to be chaotic. Chaotic, so there's loss of life because they have no respect for life. And to post up that story, to create that story. Bob Moore and Angela Kachurga have no respect for life. What they care about are those LLCs, about those contracts, the legalized theft of the American people. The legalized theft of the American people. See, we got the contract to use our equipment, to use our military installation, to use our resources, to be paid for by the debt, to indebt our country, and then to do not even wonder what the motive was to kill Richard. And for it to be premeditated, it's written in the LLCs. They tell a story. Now you might say, oh, where does it say that? No. Y'all. They tell a story. It's the spirit of it. The behavior tells a story. The connections tell a story. Just the involvement in these LLCs and what the LLCs provide tell a story. Our witnesses, that witness Dallas Hart, being very good with a computer. He's very good with a computer. And we know that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Leilani Hart was tampering with files. She was tampering. She was bragging that she was running the CID. I didn't brag it. She bragged it. I didn't say that she has this close connection with Tavita Nusa. She said it. James Hart said it. But this is where the inconsistency comes in. He's like, I don't know that, Travis. Well, don't you remember your football days? I think you know the Nusas. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of connections, family connections, business connections, service connections, and I don't even want to say service. I should say military installation, taking advantage of our military installation, taking advantage of our uniforms, our stars and stripes, our country, taking advantage of it, disrespecting it, betraying it. But not Richard. He stood up to it, up to the criminal activity, to the betrayal. He didn't want the betrayal. He didn't want 85,000 missing children, which we know now that the contracts for housing in El Paso for the migrant children was not a good thing. is not a good thing. That children are being sexually exploited, sexually abused, and they film it, y'all. That's how despicable they are. So, this is for Richard. This absolute Fit Fam El Paso. Buying that, we didn't blink an eye. To buy that, to have it as proof. That this is a betrayal against Richard. That Fit Fam El Paso LLC is in memory of Richard, our hero, standing up against this criminal activity on the military installation. And it's been going on. And he got there, and it was very bad, and he reported it. And they betrayed him. And they tried to silence him with the harassment. And they had more authority over him than they did us. They couldn't just, because I'm sure they did it, they couldn't just send the sexually explicit, harassing messages. I don't know what Glennon Oakley Jr. was sent. It was bad. He was all shaken up. He was crying. Because they have, being part of the armed services, these criminals, they had power over Richard. And Major General Clem Coward had power over him. And they retaliated against him unjustly and were in the battle to restore his rank, to restore his name, which we've done a pretty good job. And Bob Moore didn't like that. Angela Kachurga didn't like that. They wanted to dirty him. And that's why they put up that defamatory, fake story. And Jules Chan crosses paths with them. And did it too. How disgusting. How disgraceful. Because we know, and we have the receipts, that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. And I put up something about Mary, Mother of God, Lourdes, France, and very moving place, holy place in France. The day to remember Bernadette, and the last sighting that she had was July 16th. Something special happened that day. We're at 2 days ago. Something very special in Richard's case. And not only did we receive information about the Walmart mass shooting, that something that very few people know, that the company had sent hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think like $500,000, to the Walmart there at Cielo Vista, because they knew they had gotten reports that something violent was going to happen there, and they wanted to up the security. Yet that money was not used to up the security. There was not one security guard in Walmart that day. That money was used to be paid out in bonuses. I wonder who it went to, and why there was not one security guard in that Walmart when Walmart sells weapons and ammunition. But that's small information. Even though that's big, that's breaking news information. Because this is all about security breaches. This is all about the betrayal of those in and around the Walmart, the emergency intake center, that are supposed to be, and I'm not saying all, I'm saying that there needs to be a big investigation, and those that are involved in this criminal activity need to be held accountable, because they're being paid by us, they're wearing our uniforms, they are getting contracts from us, and they're up to no good. And it's a betrayal, because they have to take an oath. And something happened on the 16th that's even bigger. And I'm not quite at the liberty to say. I just want you to pray. Pray, because it's big. And it would absolutely be a huge blessing in this case. So thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you for your prayers and your love. We are absolutely moving forward. So much is going on, and watching this RNC, which is very important, because, and we'll be watching the DNC too, to see the thoughts from all the states in the country, to see what they have to say, to hear what they have to say, to hear the wants of the people and the supports. There's a huge shift going on. And, you know, El Paso is a very special place. A very special place, and that's why they have targeted El Paso. Absolutely, it has been targeted. Because when you listen to these speeches, a lot of them bring you right back to the situations in El Paso with our military, with the hopes and wishes of this country. So thank you so much. I will be back tomorrow, God willing. And this is for Richard. And if it's for Richard, it's for every service member. It's for our country. Thank you, everyone. God bless you, and please share.